Hey there, Assassins. Gabe Graziani, Manager, Community Development on Assassin's Creed Valhalla. About a month ago, we gave our Ubisoft Star players a little bit of a glimpse behind the curtain of Ubisoft Valhalla. Now, what we'd like to do today is show you a segment of that and give you an idea of some of the brutal and visceral combat mechanics. To do that, we've invited our lead system designer, Marc-Antoine Pietri, to tell us all about it. Take it away, Marc-Antoine.
So hi everyone, I'm super happy to run you through some of the stuff we've been working on the combat side. And for this presentation, we really wanted to focus on one thing that was super important to us. It was how we try to immerse our players into a Viking battlefield. At the beginning of the project, we started to think about what would be this type of battlefield. For us, it was meant to be visceral, brutal. It was meant also to showcase the personality of our Ivor, like showing her as a gritty, cunning warrior, but also someone pragmatic. It was also important because in Viking culture, this battlefield is what brings you the closest to the afterlife. It's something, if you die honorably on the battlefield, you go to Valhalla. So we wanted to have this sort of exhilarating feeling to it. So with that in mind, we started to look at what we have, and we felt like we really needed to upgrade some of our techniques, thinking into the way we work at the core of the combat. So I'm going to run you through some of those techniques we've developed. The first one is really has to do with the way we animate our attacks. Usually we have some new weapon types and we try to think about the philosophy that they all have. Some are more about being fast, some are about accelerating the tempo, some are about being powerful, and we animate them with that in mind. Here, our animators wanted to have a little twist to all that. They came up with something that we called weapon deformation. It's something that basically allows you to directly animate a weapon. So something more, let's say, not realistic, but something that really increases the feeling that you have when you fight. So what would happen is, imagine during like a hit sequence, or as you can see on some video, we actually animate the weapon at the moment of the hit. For example, if it's an axe, we try to curve it, and during the hit phase, we make it go back to its initial form. Or if it's a hammer, we increase its size up until it goes back to its regular shape. But all this allows us to really push the feeling that we want to have on a weapon. So for example, if you have an axe and a sword, it allows us to like have this feeling of acceleration with the hit, where something is going to go back very fast to its initial form. So it's something that we don't want the player to really perceive, grasp on its own, but it's something that we want the player to feel. So we have to really tweak that, find that sweet spot so player can feel it without being fully aware of it. So that's our first technique. After we decided to have a look at something super important for us, it's what we call the feeling of impact. Traditionally on AC, we do that by working on the blood, on the FX, on the hit reaction of the enemies. They are great tools to convey a strong feeling when you hit an enemy. There was a twist that we wanted to add for this game, and that we prototype and we felt super happy with. It's something that we call stickiness that we're going to see on the next video. So stickiness, the idea here is when you hit an enemy, your weapon's going to stay stuck in the body for a certain amount of frame. But while we do that, like the weapon stays stick in the upper body, but we still have some torso movement on Ivor. And on top of that, we add some hit frame for the rest of the world. And it allows, like this mix allows us to have a nice, like let's say, tension between the movement that we keep with Ivor and the stickiness that's in the weapon and in the enemies that really makes you feel more the impact, like them being more powerful. So it's something, of course, that like some parameters, some tech that we developed, and the idea was to use that, tweak it specifically for each weapon so that it really reinforces the feeling we were going for each of those. So that's it for the stickiness. So this was really about, attacking and hitting. The super important part, of course, is also about killing enemies. Like, how do we do that in the most exhilarating way? So traditionally, same thing. We have a couple of techniques that we've been working on for the two past AC games. The first one was what we call ragdoll killing reactions. When we kill an enemy, we maintain the movement of your attack, and we apply a trajectory with a small physics impulse that can be sometimes even pushed further with strong attacks to really make you feel that okay, you've landed a strong strike that killed the enemy. So that's our first technique. The second one is those very big finisher, very cinematographic that we all love because they are a great narrative tool. We close up the camera and we display like a synced animation. The thing with those paired animation, those strong finisher, they can be a bit long. There's a close-up, so they can break a bit the flow. So we have to be careful when we use them. So we started to work on Assassin's Creed Valhalla at the beginning, and there was a problem that came very quickly, was when we were killing enemies with our faster weapons and our faster attack, player would have a tendency to land the second strike over the dead body because they were mashing the input. It felt a bit like a letdown, so we felt like, okay, we really have to work on that. We came up with some solution. One of them was having a skill that like promotes like having a good tempo on the moment where you hit, but it didn't feel enough, like not at the core of it. We tried some stuff about queuing input, but it had some side effects. And in the end, we came up with a solution that you're going to see in the next video. It's what we call the micro finishers. So here the idea is super simple. It's when you're going to kill an enemy with a light strike, it's going to play a very short, brutal finisher. The important part for those finisher was actually to make sure that they keep the tempo of the fight alive. It was very important in the way we would animate them, that we feel that Ivor is ready to take out the next opponent, that it's not something that concludes the fight. So here, there's no camera close-up or anything. It's more something directly in the flow, in the continuity of your animation. That's gonna not take that much time, but that's gonna maintain really the brutal flow of the fight alive. So that was for the micro finisher. After, we had a big reflection about those strong finisher that I was mentioning before. We love them because they are a great tool to convey the personality of Ivor, like to show her as someone pragmatic, gritty. And the consensus at the beginning was we wanted to see them more in the battlefield. Because traditionally, what we would do on the two past aces is having them when you finish the fight. Here we had some longer fights with the raid, assault, you're raiding with your crew, so there's a continuity of the fight. So it felt we had to bring those finishers in the middle of the action. The problem is we didn't want it to be random. We wanted to control the tempo of it. So we came up with this philosophy that was, okay, we're going to use those finishers to reward mastery. So making sure that those finishers happen when the player does something great. And we ended up developing two types. So the first time we're going to see on screen, it's what we call the warrior takedowns. So the warrior takedowns, here the gameplay philosophy is very simple. When an enemy is in what we call a weakened state, that's a short state, for example, when he's unaware, when you just parried him, you just open his defense, or you attack him in his back. If you kill him with a strike, you're going to play this brutal finisher. Here, what was interesting in terms of tempo for us was those states are very brief, and it's also not something that that modifies that much the resistance of the enemy. So when you hit them in that position, you did extra damage, but you don't necessarily kill them. So here, it would only happen if you kill them as a reward. On the animation side, we really use those finishers to convey a bit the personality of Ivor. Like the idea here was we're going to use the weapon to show something fast, to get the idea, like this gritty idea that the emergency of the fight is maintained and Ivor is already ready to take the next one, but also display her skills, like take a bit more time through clinical, precise strike to show how cunning a warrior she is. And that's where we used, of course, dismemberment technique. Like that was the best place for us to do it. And so, yeah, it was really being little but continue the tempo. So that was our first technique, the warrior takedown. After we have a second one that we're going to see in the next video. It's what we call the stun kill. Stun kill, it came from our new system. So now enemies have a defense gauge. You can deplete that defense gauge by using some advanced technique like we see on screen, like shooting weak points. You can also do that by doing long sequence of parries. Once you've depleted completely the defense, the enemy goes in a stun state. And here, when he's in the stun state, his weapons are down. His defense is he's completely open for you. So here the idea was, if you go nearby the enemy, you're gonna, just by pressing the trigger, you're gonna activate that sequence. And here we wanted to showcase a bit more the personality of Ivor being pragmatic, because she's gonna use the weapons of the enemy against her. And so what's cool is we show her personality, but also we have some enemies that have pretty exotic weapons, so it allows us to be very creative in the way we kill them. So that's it for the stun kill, and here it concludes this presentation. So here you see how we brought all those different techniques to really try to push the visceral aspect of the fight and make this tempo, of having a battlefield that's relentless and keep going for the player.